light that shines in everyone. I believe.
Good morrow, parishioners. It is Sunday School Bonanza. It is time to talk about through gospel doctrine, make the most of things. This is a This Week in Mormons production, and we hope you'll visit us at thisweekinmormons.com and hang out with us, wherever that may be. Social media, websites, blah, 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 blah. I'm joined once again by the fantastic human and true example, or as the scriptures would say, ensample unto all of us. Kurt Francom is here.
What's up? Kurt Francom in the house.
Really? You did what's up like that?
That's right, man. I'm
Thank
this is
you.
90s throwback to a beer commercial. No big deal.
1996 or whatever that was. What's up?
What's up?
That's the first time that's ever been done on this show. Thank you.
Oh, there's going to be
much.
more first coming from you, Jeff.
Thank you for setting
Buckle
the
up.
tone for this show. Well, Kurt's here from LeadingLDS, and we're glad to have him again. Please visit him at leadinglds.com, and of course, subscribe. He's got a podcast on iTunes now as well, so find that on there and get on there, subscribe.
And it is not in the explicit category, so you're safe to listen to that.
No explicitness. It's very clean, very happy, all about leadership, self-improvement. He's like Tony Robbins with priesthood keys. It's amazing.
I guess, yeah, I'm the Tony Robbins
The man knows what's
of
going
home
on.
teaching.
So our lesson this week is called Lesson 19, The Reign of the Judges. So no cute cryptic quote to kind of wonder what the content is. It's just the reign of the judges, and that's what's going on. So for a little bit of background as to why we have a reign of the judges, after Joshua died, Israel was not united under a single leader until we had King Saul and Samuel and everything that was going on with that. So there was a bit of period of time when there were basically just military rulers and judges and stuff like that. The judges, were the rulers and leaders. So a lot of the reign was fraught with problems. There were also good examples of faith. So that's kind of what we're getting into in things today. And we lead off, there's a great story here from President Hinckley that President Hinckley shared in 1993. When he was young, he planted a tree in his yard, but he neglected to use any supporting stakes to help it grow straight. So in time, the wind basically caused the tree to lean badly to one side. So he realized that if he had tied the tree to stakes, it would have been supported until it was strong enough to resist the wind on its own. Do you see the object lesson, Kurt? Do you see where we're going with this? Okay.
Teachers out there better practice drawing a good tree because this is going to be required. And for the students, you will walk in and you'll see a illustrated tree on the board, and you'll know you are in the right place. And
then the stakes in this case are actually tied via some rope. So you've got 4 stakes: righteous friends, covenants, faith in God, and righteous parents. Never mind the fact that when I see young saplings in this day and age, there's usually one stake that's just bound to them, parallel to them. But that's okay. We're going to work with the 4-stake scenario today.
It's true.
It's going to be great.
Jeff, let me ask you a personal question here.
All right. Okay.
What were the stakes in your life? Why are you still an active member at this point in your life? Faithful active member.
Well, one stake would be just no desire to disappoint my parents. But I guess when I was younger, there was that element. Let's see. I think a lot of this does go along with what we're going to talk about today.
That's true.
I have faith. I do. My faith is growing. It develops. It shifts. It changes. It's something I work on, but it's there. I have made covenants with the Lord in and out of the temple, and there is strength in covenants. And if you want to be reminded of that, look up Elder Christofferson's talk from a few conferences ago about covenants. It's really good.
Yeah, really good.
I think Righteous Friends does have a big deal. It's not like I have non-member friends and I love them and I can get along with them just fine. But of course, there's something I appreciate very much about having friends who share my values, whether they're LDS or not. But share those values. That does help me to be a better person, because there's been a time in my life when I had not very few Mormon friends, and I was more of a schmo during those times, perhaps, And so,
which is fine. I mean, there's non-Mormons could be good influence, right?
Yeah, of course they can. Yeah, and then I've got righteous parents, and for me, it's righteous, especially righteous extended family has actually been a bigger role for me. I've had some very powerful uncles in my life who have helped me out a lot. My parents got divorced when I was younger, and so I had uncles pick up the slack in a lot of ways during my teenage years for having like priesthood stuff in the home, and it was good. It was nice.
Nice. And I think these things are important to recognize in a lesson like this. Is there's an emphasis on influence of parents, influence of friends, and why these are key support resources to keep you on the straight and narrow, and it's always good to be righteous among people and not the only righteous man in town.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So one of the first ones we talk about here is there's a cycle of apostasy that affected the Israelites. The point of this one is, I guess, righteous parents, in the sense of just parents setting an example, and how at times they failed to have righteous parents, so they fell.
Yeah.
I do love some of the background here. Basically, that when Israel was to inherit Canaan, they were supposed to drive out all of the Canaanites and destroy them, but they failed to get all of them, as often happens in the Old Testament. And so the danger here was that as time passed on, as generations passed on, the effects of the Canaanites, who still surrounded them in one way or another, that immorality, that wickedness, that apostasy, eventually kind of crept into Israelite society. And of course, that was passed down from generation to generation. And it had a negative effect on their strength as a people.
And it, I did find, I talked about a quote in our pre-show about from Elder Neil A. Maxwell, who, it says, this is, I guess, he referred to it as having a summer cottage in Babylon.
Yeah.
And how we need to just get every ounce of Babylon out of our system. It's not even a little bit, because it can draw us back very quickly.
So here's the question, though. Apostasy can be a cycle. How do we break that cycle, though? If we assess ourselves and realize that we're in a funky little cycle, what do we do to actually get out of that?
I think every family, and I see this in my family, where my father came from a less active home, church wasn't a priority, whatever, but there's a certain momentum, a certain spiritual momentum in every family, and it's really up to you as an individual to shift that with your posterity, if there is one, or to continue it going and really, overemphasize where your faith is to your, emphasize that to your children. And I'm thinking back to Elder Holland had a conference talk about the influence of parents and how quickly a parent that falls away can later produce a grandson that's an atheist, that may be looking for truth that his family once had. Awful paraphrase, but nonetheless, I think it's just through overemphasis of where you stand as a parent, as a friend, and that influence will impact those around you in the positive direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I have nothing to add to that. That's a great story. Thanks.
Which brings us to Deborah, right?
Yeah, positive, righteous friend. So Deborah is an interesting story, actually, because she was, in essence, a prophetess. And there are many who might read the example of Deborah and disagree with it or be confused because saying, wait a minute, because Deborah was one of the judges. When we're talking about this reign of the judges, she was a judge. She was a prophetess over Israel. Israel had poor leadership. Deborah rose up. And I have a great quote here from James E. Talmage, actually, from his book Articles of Faith. I would love to share this if you'll permit me.
Do it.
So he says, no special ordination in the priesthood is essential to a man's receiving the gift of prophecy. Bearers of the Melchizedek priesthood, Adam, Noah, Moses, and multitude of others, were prophets, but not more truly so than others who were specifically called to the Aaronic order, as exemplified in the instance of John the Baptist. The ministrations of Miriam and Deborah show that this gift may be possessed by women also. And so
absolutely,
I think that's a great thing to remember. It's not always that it's, when we talk about prophet, seer, revelator, all that stuff, and we do talk about President Monson having priesthood keys, but in some ways I guess that is not completely contingent upon prophetship. I hope I'm making sense. The point is Deborah was able to be a prophet. She might not have had the priesthood as far as law of Moses stuff went, but she was a prophet and able to guide the people.
Yeah, and that's an interesting doctrine to discuss, as Elder Oaks discussed in priesthood session in this past conference, and it's more of a question of priesthood keys as opposed to priesthood authority or just authority in general, because women can receive direction and inspiration, and Relief Society presidents across the church receive revelation that the bishop can confirm by his keys that he holds, that it is actual inspiration coming through women in the church.
Yeah. And so we see that the Lord commands Barak, not Barak, but Barak. He has to go and fight the battle against Sisera and his 900 chariots. He wanted Deborah to go with him because I think he felt more comforted if Deborah, this wonderful
Let me ask you a question, Jeff. Were you ever a church baller? I know this is a random question.
I have some stories I could share, but for the sake of brevity, I could say in name only. I guess we'll say that.
You know that guy. There'd always be that guy or two that would come and they'd bring their girlfriend and they'd just like sit on the stage. Yeah, Barak was one of those guys.
Oh yeah, yeah, man. You play to impress,
right? Maybe, and so I'm thinking maybe that's why he brought Deborah as a support. I don't know if there's a romantic relationship going on. I don't perceive that.
Well,
but
and then also you see that that Deborah was if you read verses 9, if you're in Judges chapter 4, you see that Deborah has these great qualities that Barak likely didn't have. She had faith. She had humility. She had these things that he felt he needed that he couldn't do on his own, and that with Deborah kind of at his side, shoring up that side of him that was bereft of whatever, that it would make him stronger to go up to battle against Sisera, which I thought was, which of
awesome
course is
example of the power of that friends could be. And really going back to the story of my father, he was he went to church as a youth simply because his friends were going, and then all his friends were going on missions, and he thought, well, I guess I don't want to stay home alone, so I'll go on a mission. And that's really, that was really the turning point of his faith, cementing his testimony. So friends can be such a powerful resource.
And I think to flip that around, it's one thing to surround ourselves with good friends, but also look at yourself and ask yourself, are you being that friend to other people? Are you filling that role? And that's something very positive that we can do for other people.
Yeah.
The next point is Gideon. Gideon was he was a righteous dude. Am I right? I am.
He was righteous, and he was a warrior.
Hardcore warrior, yeah. So what part of the problem here is you've got the Midianites are all around. The Midianites and the Amalekites, they're basically desert dwellers and vagabonds who just robbed Israel all the time. They were a problem. And even at this point, Israelites had actually moved into caverns in the mountains to be protected. They were impoverished. So the Midianites and Amalekites were causing lots of problems here for Israel. So, of course, Gideon was to go down and take care of business. But
he had to deliver Israel.
He had an army of 32,000 men, though. He was ready to go.
But the Lord said, no. Why don't you take your best 300? I don't know if it's the best 300, but take 300.
300!
And go to war, and I will show you my power. And that's an awesome story. I think there's so many times I know in life where I just feel like I'm going to battle against the many things of life, and I just don't have enough. And the Lord just says, I will show you my power. I'll make this work out.
I like that he had them chant as well, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And what a way to bolster their faith and to remind them who was with them in this instance.
Every elders quorum should start with saying the sword of the Lord and of Gideon every week.
Or end of whoever the elders quorum president is.
Right. All right.
End of President Reed.
That would be really interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So Gideon's a great example of just faith. The man had complete faith, and I love that about him. It wasn't like if I had an army and the Lord dwindled it down by, about 100%. No, not 100. Yeah, a lot. Not 100%. He reduced it down by 100-fold, basically.
Yeah.
And that would be tough one to swallow, I think. It'd be very easy to lose faith, but this man didn't even care. He said, fine, you want me to take 300? We'll take 300. And we'll
right. It's like having a conference center full of people and saying, no, you just take your ward of 300. Like, but all these people.
Yeah. So good on Gideon.
Yep.
Faith.
Samson.
Oh, Samson.
I got to tell you, Jeff, I have a unique perspective when it comes to Samson because as I would say I was 7 or 8, the Days of 47 parade, my mother dressed me up as Samson.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, sorry, my culture is just beaming through the microphone here. My mother dressed me up as Samson, and I guess our ward was assigned to do these Bible stories, and so I walked in this parade as Samson, and now I look back at pictures, and I simply just look like a 7-year-old girl. It's awesome. So I know all about Samson.
For kids that young, there is very little separating them, aside from the way their parents dress them. So yeah, there's good job there, buddy.
Yeah, I'll just throw that in there.
Appreciate it. So So for some background on Samson, even when his mother was in the womb, an angel appeared to his mother and even reminded the mom not to partake of any like wine or anything or any spirits, anything like that, because he was going to be a Nazarite. And for a refresher on what a Nazarite is, it was almost like an elite squad of Israel. Basically, they covenanted. Actually, Nazarite comes from a Hebrew word, nazir, which means consecrated or separated, and it could be a man or a woman. And they voluntarily took vows, but they abstained from wine, vinegar, grapes, raisins, intoxications, etc., etc. Anything that had a trace of grapes was kind of verboten. They don't cut their hair, as you probably know from the story, and they also could not go near corpses or graves for reasons I don't fully understand, but that's okay. So the Nazarites were like a holy sect, and you could see parallels here between them and monks, I guess, if you want a more modern day parallel. And that's what Samsonite was raised to be. So he was raised to deliver Israel. He was the Lord was with him.
Yeah, another guy that had so much potential. And just kind of gave way to some temptation in his life coming up.
Yeah. Well, he soon broke his vow because he married outside of the covenant. Part of his vow was to marry within the house of Israel, and he married just a non-Israelite. I believe he married a Philistine. If I'm not mistaken, and that was a no-no. But he just did it because he loved her. So there you go. But then it gets worse for him. It gets worse. What else does he do?
He, let's see, he cuts his hair as well, which is...
Yeah. Well, that's even later. I was going for the harlot.
Oh.
He goes to Gaza
the harlot, you're right.
and finds a harlot, so that happens.
And he's immoral with a harlot.
And then he meets Delilah.
And that is the true love story, right?
Yeah, so she beguiles him and says, "You should cut your hair." And he, being a stupid, because men, we're experts at doing stupid things for the favor of women.
Yeah,
that's what we do.
And this is a perfect story of doing that.
And so what happens? What happens to him? What happens to him once he cuts his hair?
Well, then he the Philistines bind him and explain that because of Samson's hair was the source of his physical strength, he's bound, and many parallels there.
He was blinded too. Yeah.
Blinded, yeah.
And the thing to remember is it's not like the hair itself possessed a physical thing of strength, but the hair was a sign of his covenant as a Nazarite. And so by cutting it, he was violating that covenant that he made. And so the Lord ceased to bless him with great strength and with success and all these things.
Yeah. And when he needed it, he did not have that power because he had violated his covenants. And
covenants are a great source of strength. And I think that's a fascinating personal study, is to truly understand why covenants in and of themselves can bring us strength. Because it's very easy to assume it's really just like a vehicle. It's just something we do in an ordinance. We make promises and say, yeah, because I love God and I'll do things. But there's actual strength in keeping covenants. And I think that's a great study.
And it's a huge part that separates us from other denominations. That's
true.
We are such a covenant-focused people because that's where we feel we gain our power by promising to God through a covenant to do things, and so many blessings come that way.
Yep. All right, well, that wraps up this lesson. We got to get going. This is Lesson 19, the reign of the judges from the Old Testament. Kurt, thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Nice to have you, pal. Everyone, remember, go to leadinglds.com and give Kurt some patronage and some site views. Help him out. Download his podcast, and download this podcast and share it with friends. And please visit us at thisweekinmormons.com. This has been, once again, Sunday School Bonanza. We're grateful for the time you've spent with us and hope it's useful to you. Let us know how we're doing. Contact at thisweekinmormons.com